5 seconds to go. Start. During the third quarter of this century, the world had seen unprecedented progress, comprising in these about 25 years an order of economic growth which is unparalleled in human history. And yet, around the close of this quarter century, more specifically over the last 8 months or so, the world has also been engulfed by numerous problems. There is even danger that the present international economic system, which has been the sheet anchor of the orderly development of the post Second War world economy, may collapse. We may revert to a chaotic situation in the matter of international trade and exchanges unless corrective steps are taken to ensure the proper functioning of the international economic system. It is therefore most timely that international financial experts from both developed and underdeveloped countries, from countries with a persistent balance of payment surplus as well as with chronic balance of payment problems, from countries on the threshold of development and from those struggling to break out of the vicious circle of poverty, low savings, and low investment, and consequent low income, have gathered here today to discuss the problems of the world economy in this crucial period of human history. The major problem of the world for the next 25 years, as I see it, is that of bringing about a better balance in the living standards and rates of growth of different peoples inhabiting this planet. As I stated earlier, the world had seen unprecedented growth over the last 25 years, an order of growth which perhaps the world has not seen in a couple of centuries preceding this quarter century, or even perhaps over 1,000 years preceding the last couple of centuries. Nonetheless, this growth has occurred only in certain parts of the world and has left behind vast sections of the human race living in conditions prevailing in the Middle Ages or even worse. This inevitably gives rise to tensions and to problems of international exchanges which are deep seated and for which all thinking men have to find an adequate solution. In the race for growth, we cannot afford to forget or to neglect the conditions of life and the prospects of growth for large sections of the world population. Large disparities lead to tensions and create manifold problems and discrepancies with a country. With improved communications, the same is likely to hold true for the Committee of Nations. The basic problem that faces the world today, in my view, is one of orderly growth of all nations. The 1960s were declared by the United Nations as the first development decade, and a fair amount of growth was achieved by many developing countries during those 10 years, though in retrospect one finds that the rate of growth achieved by developing countries has still been less than the rate of growth achieved by the developed countries generally. The second development decade, however, has not seen even this modest rate of growth in so far as the developing countries are concerned. Indeed, the year which has just ended, has seen unprecedented inflation in all countries of the world, with an attempt by many countries, including some developed ones, to pass on the burdens of this inflation to others, with the result that this burden has fallen on those who are least capable of bearing it. There has also been a cooling off of the spirit of cooperation and international assistance which has characterized the previous decade. I consider this to be an unhappy development. Just as no man can live and thrive by himself, no country can prosper today in isolation or in complete disregard of the well being of its neighbors and of its trading partners around the world. This is a perspective which I feel we should keep in mind while discussing some of the present problems of the world. I have heard in many forums that the crisis in the world today arises solely because of the policies adopted by the oil producing countries. The sudden and sharp increase in oil prices has undoubtedly created certain problems for which there is need for appropriate solutions for the problems of transition and adjustment. But we seem to forget that oil is a wasting resource, that for decades the price of oil has no relationship to the real cost of this primary source of energy in terms of the cost of its alternatives, and that the trade and aid policies of the developed countries have also been onerous for many developing countries, the more so because of the long history of such policies. In more recent times, I find that the forces of inflation are becoming infectious and that many countries facing internal problems are seeking to pass on the burden of their own inflation to other helpless countries. This, to my mind, is a short sighted policy which contributes to the sense of international insecurity and which could lead to a return to the distressing conditions of the interwar years. We should not encourage this bad policy. Stop.